And we do it, why?
Well, because, oh gosh, so that why has capital letters and exclamation marks and everything around it.
Welcome to the podcast. This is Tracy Donegan. Today I'm speaking with midwife Molly O'Brien. Molly shares her insights from her work, Biomechanics for Birth, and why knowing how to optimize positioning in labour is so important for mothers and midwives. And now I bring you Molly O'Brien.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to my podcast. And I am delighted to welcome today Molly O'Brien, who is an expert in the biomechanics of birth and a very experienced midwife. And I've been following her work for quite a while now. And I'm really delighted to sit down, have a cup of tea and a conversation. And welcome to the show, Molly. And I have to say, please tell me where the name came from.
Well, it's my family name, Molly O'Brien. The family are from Ireland, but of course with that name. But we are Scottish, and it was many generations ago that they came over from Ireland. O'Brien actually is coming from, well, oh, there's a part of our family coming from Sligo. I do know that, but there are other parts of Ireland as well. But we all, as many did in the mid 1800s, head over to Glasgow and various other parts of the UK. And the Glasgow Irish, that would be my part of the family there. So, yeah,
Like,
brought up with Irish songs in the background and very much feeling part of Ireland, actually, Tracy.
and you get to visit fairly frequently as well, don't you?
Well, it's true. I've been teaching in Ireland, and in fact, I am going over there. Well, what day is it today? Is it Thursday? A week today, I will be flying to Kerry Airport to teach in
Lovely.
Tralee a week tomorrow.
Gorgeous. Lovely, lovely part of the world now. But bring your jumpers and bring your wellies.
Oh, totally.
For yeah, December in Kerry. Well, December in Ireland. But so tell me, what are you going to be doing in Kerry?
I'll be teaching the course Biomechanics for Birth in the local hospital in Tralee, and they are very enthusiastic for it, understandably, especially because Ireland is very medicalized. The childbirth experience is well, it's been obstetric led for a long time, but not only that, very powerfully down on midwifery. So the midwives are raring to go. They are really feeling that they need to step up, and learning more about physiology, learning more about how the body works is part of that. So they can feel empowered themselves to help women have a better birth experience.
Yeah, and for anyone who's watching and has an interest in the Irish birth scene, it is, and we have a two-tier model as well. So we have, you can pay to have private care with an obstetrician, but the option to just choose midwife-led care, which of course is recommended worldwide for the vast majority of healthy, well women, is really not an option. And in Ireland, the general practitioner, the GP, is kind of the gatekeeper of and influence women where to get their care. So there is a huge focus on going private and the assumption that you're going to get better care, but without the added information of you, not necessarily better care, more intensive observation during pregnancy, and more likely to have your labor induced, more likely to have intervention, even as a healthy, well woman. So I think the idea that, oh, going private is something that is, if your private health insurance can afford it, or if you can pay the extra, there's a lot of misconceptions that that's the best care, when we know optimal care, again, for the vast majority of women, is with midwives. And I have to say, I'm thrilled to see the last couple of years the really Irish midwives really coming into their own and demanding a seat at the table, because it's
Absolutely.
it's midwives are running the system. Midwives, well, they've been literally, backed into a corner and they're caught between a rock and a hard place, trying to support physiology and give really compassionate care to the families they're working with. But the constraints the system they're working within is soul crushing for midwives who are really interested in authentic midwifery. But before we go on, tell me what is what is biomechanics of birth? What does that actually mean?
Well, it's really quite simple. It's how is this baby traveling through the mother's body, through the pelvis to the outside? And I chose the name biomechanics specifically because it had a scientific sound to it. And indeed it is science, because biomechanics is a study of human movement. And a baby passing through its mother's body, there's some movement, isn't it? So I think I also wanted to demystify it, because when you use certain techniques that I certainly teach and others do too, it can work sometimes like magic. And people tended to say, oh, go and do your magic. But it shouldn't stay in that conversation, that narrative of it's special, it's mystic, it's magic. And while it works like magic, it's absolutely set in anatomy and physiology and how our bodies work. So I needed it to be regarded seriously in that way. And that's why I chose biomechanics. I want to also say something about this, Tracy, is that we stepped away from looking at the mechanical element of birth for several reasons, one of which was the idea that women were mechanical bodies only. And I understand why we would want to steer clear of that kind of narrative. But it did actually do us a disservice, which meant that we'd never actually looked at that properly. In fact, nobody has. We really know very little about the mechanical element of birth, and it's time that we actually looked at it, because it's at it lies beneath labour dystocia, making birth, what makes birth difficult. So we need to be looking at that, working it out and understanding it, naming it. There's not even a consensus on the definition of labour dystocia, so we can't even name it properly. So we really need a lot of work on this area to help women.
It's interesting. Like I'm qualified 10 years now, and we didn't. Even though I have to say my midwifery education was fantastic, we didn't spend a lot of time on. Trying to remember, do we spend any time on really what is happening, how the pelvis is moving? We understood, the basics of the pelvis, and that it moves and shifts, and that's influenced by hormones and positioning. But that was kind of the the limit of our education. And that upright birth was great, and movement was great. But so what are midwives who are newly qualified and maybe haven't learned about the biomechanics? What would you recommend? I mean, what do they need to know about the pelvis? Like, if you could say, like, one thing you're going to walk away from today that's going to help you today on the labor ward.
Yeah. Well, I think what you've just said, I mean, at the minute, if we're going to go with what students and midwives know right this moment, is the pelvis moves. And we all get that. We've all been taught that. Now, if we apply that to practice, and we consider what would be happening if this woman is lying down, semi-supine, semi-recumbent, or whatever, and most women are, what is that doing to a pelvis that opens up and makes space for that baby? If we even start to look at that, critically analyse what is going on in that birth room, for that pelvis, for that woman who is lying down, compressing her sacrum, where she's not allowed to move, straight away, those students and those midwives must surely see that this needs to be addressed, movement in the birth room. And actually, Tracy, that's my big thing. It's not about the techniques. It's not about the positions. It's about freedom to move. And I think that's the ultimate solution for most of those problems, is the ability to find that instinctive position that she chooses herself.
I think something for anyone that's watching may miss out on the kind of nuance of when you say you're not allowed. So
Mm.
what tends to happen is not that nobody's going to usually say to the mother, you're not allowed to move, but it's positioned in a way of, again, if they're routinely using electronic fetal monitoring, the CTG, sometimes it's framed as, oh, we're not getting a good trace. So we need to have you, sit or lie in this position. So in other words, stop moving. We need you still, which again in
Exactly.
labor is just, come on, the body needs to do what it needs to do. So, but I just wanted to say that
Absolutely.
for how it
Yeah.
comes across, it's usually not, you're not allowed to move. It's tied to something else. We're not getting good trace, or
Yeah.
we get it's that kind of positioning to get women to comply to not move.
Well, that's a nail on the head, isn't it, Tracy? That's exactly what it's about. And what we're doing with that is prioritizing the machine over the needs and requirements of the woman who is giving birth.
Yeah, and a machine that has proven
There's no
itself time and
evidence.
time again to
Yeah.
be not worthless, but it has, yeah, if we're putting that piece of machinery over what we can see with our own eyes,
Yeah.
we know what the evidence is for that. It's
Well,
compellingly
it's very poor,
wrong.
isn't it? We
Yeah,
absolutely, and I love Kirsten Small's work, the obstetrician
yes,
who's done a PhD in this area, and everybody should be looking at her work and what she's found, because there really is very little, if any, evidence to support this machine in the birth room. And yet we
yeah. That's it.
prioritise it over the woman's
Yeah,
comfort and ability to give birth to her baby more easily.
and we do it. Why?
Hey there, if you're enjoying this conversation and are passionate about making the transition to motherhood as easy as possible, the best way to support our work is to subscribe and share this episode with other amazing women in your life. Your support to us is so important and helps us reach more mothers with empowering content. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button and spread the love.
Well, because, oh gosh, so that why has capital letters and exclamation marks and everything around it. It is, I mean, for me, this is where the conversation goes in my course. And in fact, I feel like I'm using biomechanics as a vehicle to have this kind of conversation, is that because most midwives, the majority of midwives are working in the biomedical model, technocratic model, and that's why we have birth rooms that look like the bed is dominant, there's machinery around, and there's limited availability for movement in the room, and much more. And in the midwifery model or physiological model, where midwifery sits, that is a very different environment. And if you look at birth centres and where midwives work at home births, these are environments that actually support physiology, and there's an understanding there of what a woman needs to support her own body, and that's very much comes from herself, but also from the midwives who are supporting her. They bring that knowledge with them. But there is the problem. The majority are working in that biomedical model, and go back to our training, and the reason that we don't hear about biomechanics and so forth is mainly because our training is founded in pathology. Again, that biomedical technocratic model within our training itself. So we've got to, we know this in our hearts. We come into midwifery to do something different to being obstetric nurses, and yet that is the work that majority of us are doing, overseeing obstetric intervention.
And what do we do about it? How do we shift? Well, other than taking courses like yours, so there
mm,
is a
mm,
focus
mm,
on physiology
mm,
and
mm,
normality. And
mm.
how do I guess, yeah, it's $1 million question. How do we get to a point where physiology is respected and there's not this huge fear, which is instilled in so many midwives and obstetricians around litigation? And that's one of the reasons why, this piece of machinery has become such a big part of the birth room. It's litigation, it's protecting, covering our backsides, and even,
Absolutely.
I'm going to actually meet with Dr. Small in actually, I think in a couple of weeks. We're going to talk as well about her research, and which I'm really excited about.
Brilliant.
But it's very hard to take that technology out of the birth room
Hmm.
now that it's been
Hmm.
there for so long. So it's this
Yeah.
balancing act of decreasing the use of the technology while increasing the comfort level and
Mm.
knowledge of midwives to trust their own skills with
Yep.
birth
Yeah. Mm,
physiology.
mm. You're so right, Tracy. This is multifaceted. It doesn't have an easy answer, and it's going to take some time. But I truly believe that we can do it. And when we consider what used to happen to women, quite a few decades, when I was having my first baby, in fact, and he's now 44, um, it was routine to cut women, to cut them, to do an episiotomy. Every single woman was cut. Every single woman was shaved, and every single woman had an enema, and it wasn't just a little enema, it was a big old tube up the backside with soap and water. It was really quite very unpleasant, and these were routine practices, and they were in our work for quite some time, and eventually it was stopped because they realized actually that's totally unnecessary. And I do believe that will come back again, that we will realize with people like yourself and people like Kirsten Small and many, many others, we're all starting to speak up about this, and that is going to help that movement take courage with evidence, take courage with speaking up. And there's an awful lot of midwives are saying enough is enough. But as top of that, we're not going to do it on our own. The women, we walk with the women. That's our role, isn't it, as midwives? We with women. And we don't do this alone. We're walking together on this. And once the women actually realize what's happening to them, that they're being experimented on with machinery and drugs that are not properly evaluated, they will, and I think that's happening. I think they're realizing what the heck's going on. Induction of
Yeah.
labor, there are very few women who are actually having a spontaneous physiological birth. Hardly any at all. And I think
Yeah.
I hope they will speak up, and we'll be with them.
It is, and it's what you're going to see if you haven't already seen it happening on your many trips to Ireland, is that induction rates now are routinely over 50% for first
Mm?
time mothers. So so part of what we're struggling is with how do we get the information to mothers to say routine induction at 39 weeks, you're healthy and well. It just doesn't make sense. It's the healthiest option is a spontaneous start to labor, but they're being promised, well, come in, we'll, get you in the book and you'll have your baby, you'll be home for Christmas. And it's so, I think, because the antenatal education field has changed even quite a bit since COVID, because a lot of hospitals didn't go back to in-person classes. They're still doing online, which means for so many women, they're seeing the hospital birth plan for themselves, but they're not getting any kind of unbiased information or independent information about,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
so what is mom's birth plan as such, if it's for spontaneous or unmedicated or as low intervention as possible. We need that information getting to parents. And now it feels like between YouTube has become the childbirth educator of choice. And we know what's out on YouTube is, if it's, yeah, it's so difficult to really get good evidence-based information to parents.
Mm,
But even like with the maternity service itself are not offering the information to women. So it's being
mm.
sold as you've been pregnant for 9 months, come in next week and let's have a baby and
Yeah,
start the next part of your
I think
adventure.
absolutely, yeah. And some women will choose that, and that's our right to choose that. And for those women who want that,
Yeah.
they will have no problem getting it. It's available
Yes.
readily too much for everyone, and fine if you want that, you can have that. But for many women who don't want it, there lies a problem because they're actually language is used if they feel pushed into it that they have to have it, and so forth. I think in relation to birth education, Tracy, and that's a key area I think that we need to be building on is, and I think we've actually got an opportunity now because those NHS and institution-led birth preparation classes have gone down the pan. That has opened up an opportunity for midwives to step in with really good quality evidence-based information that they can develop their own and design their own birth preparation classes independently as registered professionals. This is something we can do. I think a lot of them don't, a lot of midwives don't realise that they can step out of the system and do that privately. And I think they
Yeah.
should. And I think also two of the key areas for birth preparation, if I can say, is birth, hypnobirthing and biomechanics, because that's the mind and the body. And I think that is a beautiful marriage for an excellent birth preparation course.
It is absolutely because
Mm,
when you're looking at that whole mind body connection, when you're using
mm,
hypnobirthing and you are in tune with your body, you can hear what your body is telling you. So many of us, we kind of live, as I say, above the neck, and we're not tuned into our body unless there's something wrong. When it's going wrong, we're tuned in because I have a sniffly nose or I have a bit of a tickle in my throat today, but we're not used to those very subtle signals in the body that can share so much knowledge with us if we can actually learn the language, listen to our body.
absolutely spot on. And there lies a problem. I talk to everybody about instinctive birth, that their instinctive movement for the woman to be able to do that within in the birth room, she does require three things. I used to say two things, three things. One is the ability to get up and move and to choose whatever position she needs to get into. And the other two is trust and confidence in your ability to give birth and to be connected to your body, and all the things you've just said actually puts us on the back foot. We're not listening to our bodies, we're not trusting, and we have a lot of fear. It's complicated, but I don't believe that the solutions are complicated. I think it's very convoluted. The whole process is multi-layered, but good quality, physiology informed, meaningful birth preparation classes that bring movement into it. Dance, put some music on and dance and move your body. Feel what that's like. How does your pelvis feel? Walk. Encourage walking and movement in pregnancy is a very good thing for you. It's a really, really marvelous exercise, easy to do, and is wonderfully helpful in connecting with your body and calming your mind. Just walking.
Yeah.
So the solutions are not hard. It's just getting through all the layers of difficulty that have been put in our way as midwives and as women, as pregnant women.
Yeah, just on because for many of our viewers will be saying, my life is really busy. I'm holding down a job.
Yeah.
I'm maybe looking after elderly parents, and I'm about to give birth. You're trying to figure out, well, how fitting in the exercise and the mindfulness and which you actually can combine. So when you're going out for your evening stroll, you can be combining your birth preparation with your physical activity as well, because you can be mindful as you walk and just paying attention to how your hips move and the feeling of your feet on each step.
Absolutely.
We can find those little moments in even the busiest of days, those little kind of sprinkles of time where we can, use to prepare for best birth that we can have, and then
Absolutely.
we come out of that experience then feeling like, we stacked the odds as much as we could. If possible, we chose a birthplace that would be supportive of, physiological birth and instinctive movements. But of course, that's not easy for everybody, especially in Ireland, where you have kind of, parts of the country that would not have a great access to home birth. So sometimes parents are kind of limited in their choice of birth. What would you say to, I guess, maybe a first time mom who's due to give birth in the end of January? So she got a couple of weeks ahead of her. What would you suggest would be kind of, focus areas for her in the coming weeks? If, let's say, she's starting from very limited childbirth education and she's just realizing, now I'm having a baby next month, I should
I'm having a
probably
baby.
learn a bit of this
I
stuff.
think, absolutely. Well, going on to what we've just been talking about is just put on your favorite music right now and dance. Move your body, move your hips, move your pelvis, and do that every single day. Maybe even twice a day, 3 times a day, whatever you want. Build that up, because that one thing will be wonderful for you. The other thing would be to get a birthing ball if you haven't got one already, and be sitting on that. Make sure it's the right size for you. They do have that on the box. They're not overly expensive, and people have got them knocking around for various places. But that your knees are lower than your pelvis, that you sit on that instead of slouching in the soft sofa, and start to just move, have movement, and feel how comfortable that is to move. The other thing is, I would say, is to remember, and you might not even be, a lot of women don't know this, you can say no. You can say no to anything that's offered to you. If anybody says to you, you have to, that is wrong. That is actually just not true. You don't have to do anything. You have a
What
right.
the policy says.
The policy says, that's their policy. It's nothing to do with you. You can choose to say no thank you. And deep breathing. So dancing, breathing, these are not difficult. You can do this, and being able to say, no, thank you, I don't want that. Or give me more information about that because I don't feel I know enough. So I think those are really quite powerful, especially if it's last minute. So anybody who is last minute, you've still got options. You can still, make sure that you get what you feel is best for you.
Very simple and very powerful, because I think
Exactly.
especially for moms who are coming to the end of their pregnancy, it might be having a little kind of a wobbly moment of, I don't feel like I've prepared, or just the idea of, putting on some music. And women, I'm sure they ask you, oh, what should I play? It's like anything that makes you feel good.
Feel
So
good.
your playlist for labor
Exactly.
should be inspirational. It should be energizing, and you should have also, some, softer, more gentle music as well. But it has to be personalized. It has to make you feel, because it really evokes emotional responses first, and we know that emotions are, will release chemicals in the body, so it can be all helpful on the day. But it doesn't have to be. I always joke about it doesn't have to be all Enya music.
No.
I've been to births where, no, and yeah, it's lovely, and for a certain part of labor. But like, I've been out to births where we've had, Taylor Swift, "Shake It Off" playing, and if that doesn't get you moving and make your your hips move, I don't know what will. But again, it's a personal
No.
choice, It's
Yeah,
but yes, very
absolutely. And
simple things.
yeah, and it is a personal choice. So, and you're absolutely. When you were speaking, I just remembered actually a couple of different people. One had a loop of it was a film. It was the theme from the soundtrack of a film. Oh gosh, The Great Showman or something, and it was on loop. And the other one was a young woman who played heavy duty kind of garage, and it was thumping, and she had loads of people in her room because she wanted them there. Now we're all
Yeah.
for sort of quiet space, and having the right person there is really important as well. But well, she had a small party in there and it was exactly right for her. That was what she wanted. Very different to somebody who would prefer Enya or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's individual, as you said.
Yeah, and I really love that point, that because I think sometimes we get so in our heads about, undisturbed birth. The lights have to be dim. The room has
Yeah.
to be a certain way. Nobody's talking, no touching, no. Which again, for some women, will create the perfect environment for her to go to labor land and do what she needs to do. But there are going to be other moms who like, that's not my jam. I want to have my mother-in-law there. I want to have my sister here, and I want this to be a celebration. And as long
Mm.
as, mom is feeling good and all is well, then why shouldn't it be? It is a celebration of
Absolutely.
she's about to meet her baby.
Absolutely. I think that we should have the birth room set up as a default to support physiology, and then the woman can change it to however she wants. She can put the lights up. She
Yeah.
can do whatever. She can have the machines that go bing if it makes her feel more comfortable and safer. That's fine. I was going to say, as long as she understands the pros and cons, which I think is actually quite a good idea. But you know what? Even if she chose not to have that information, and some people might, that is still her right to decide on that. It was always, and that's so important. And that's why I think that midwives can walk alongside those women, and no matter what, it's the women that are calling the shots, and we have to support that, and we have to give them the information that will help them get the best quality care that they can have.
Yeah, I think sometimes as midwives we do forget that the expert in the room is not
It's the
us.
woman. Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
But it is something
Yeah.
that you have to stop yourself. No, we're here to kind of stand back and, as we say, drinking tea intelligently and observing, but
Yeah.
not, interfering unless there's a compelling reason to do so, or the mom has asked us to.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
had
And I agree. It's so important. We don't know how to do that, Tracy. We don't know how to sit back and do watchful waiting, practice watchful waiting, watchful attendance, drinking tea intelligently, because of the emphasis on intervention. If you're not running around madly looking for
Yeah.
equipment, looking for drugs,
Yeah,
not
looking
having
busy.
had a cup of tea, then you're not working. And that's wrong,
Yeah.
because that's not midwifery work. That's not how we do it.
No. But it has become normalized that,
Mm.
because we don't do being very well. It's like we bought into this, belief that productive means busy, and we have to be always on the go, and not sitting observing what mom is doing. But it just reminds me of, I was over at the Coombe in Dublin doing some study days on hypnobirthing, and it was so interesting for some of the midwives saying how uncomfortable they felt when they had a really well prepared couple come into the birth room, because especially if they had done gentle birth, and the partners were kind of running the show. They knew to look after the environment, what mom needed, and the midwives themselves, they felt like kind of like a third wheel. They're like, that's what they said. I didn't really know what to do, because I'm used to being the person that they come to what should we do next, or what should we try. But these couples are coming in saying, yeah, we've got this, and if we need anything, we'll let you know. And that's
Mm-hmm.
when you've come from the medical model of midwifery, really,
Mm-hmm.
where it's we have to be in there and doing all the time. That's quite unnerving, I think. So it's been an adjustment for those
Absolutely.
midwives to get comfortable with that almost
Absolutely.
discomfort of not being the expert in the room anymore. We're
Yeah,
giving that power back to
absolutely.
where it belongs.
Absolutely. That shifting that power balance is incredibly important, which is what I talk about in the course as well, is because when we are assisting to support and optimize physiology. We're doing it alongside the woman. It is actually her and her birth partner who are working together, and they are, the woman's making space in her own body for her baby. That's the power. There it is. It's not the midwife doing it. It's the woman herself doing it. And I love that it shifts that over to her. But I think what we've just been talking about there, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, that that's a gap in our training is what do we do when we're not doing? What do we do? What is it? What is midwifery as we sit quietly observing? Because we're drinking tea intelligently. Now, how we break that down into what does that actually mean? What is the work? The work is very invisible, and we need to make it visible somehow in our words, we need to break it down into what does that actually mean. And I love that. I think we need to be exploring that, and we're observing, we're taking it all in, and if we understand what it is we're actually looking out for, then that's the key. That's the problem, is that we don't see the variety of patterns of physiology unfolding, because we never get to see that in the biomedical model, or very rarely. How do we know when it goes awry if we don't actually understand those various patterns of physiology? And so we need to actually demand time and space to do our work. But we need to demand it. And we're not asking permission here. Oh, I get my Glasgow up there. I feel my Glasgow coming. We're not asking for permission. We're actually demanding time to do our work, because our work is valuable. And there's a huge subject in its own right.
And it's interesting, like because as far as I know, UK midwives, as part of their midwifery training, would have access to birth centers and would get to experience more physiology in the community, whereas most midwives who are training in Ireland, and I was lucky enough to get placed in one of our midwife-led units in Drogheda. So you got to see, again, real authentic midwifery-led care. And they're back doing water births and everything. So it's such a beautiful space that they've created for these women. But it's a big deal to try and get to, if you have a 2-week placement that's coming up and you can choose the placement, it's a big deal to try and get out with a home birth midwife. And it's just not as respected and promoted as it really should be within our midwifery education. It's kind of like, yeah, if you can do that, great, but maybe you'd rather do 2 weeks in an antenatal clinic, and I was like, no, let's show them physiology so they know what it looks like and what it looks like outside of the walls of a hospital. I think, every obstetrician should also see a home birth at some point, but for midwives, how can we support that normality and physiology if we've never seen it like in the wild as such?
Absolutely. Yes, that is problematic. And I hear you, speaking about Ireland, but in the UK, where it was a beacon, the UK was a beacon of light for a lot of Europe and across the world, with the high quality midwifery care has gone down the pan as well, because we are looking at massive intervention rates, and the closing or the initially temporary closing of midwife-led units because of COVID, but then because of the shortage of staff that's remained closed, and those are lying empty now. So we're seeing a reduction in that too. And of course, with staffing, it's a bit of a catch-22, Tracy, because staff are leaving because they can't do the work that they are trained to do and want to do. And they're frustrated, and so they're leaving, and intervention rates have gone up, midwife levels have gone down. We have a critical point now, and something needs to shift. Somebody needs to take charge of this situation.
Yeah, everybody's looking at each other to say who's gonna
Who's going to do
who's gonna
that?
step up.
Well, we can meet the women with the women and with their families.
Yeah,
We can, and we also have a tribe. I always talk. I mean, you do your thing, I'm doing my thing, but we're not alone. We've got a lot of good people around, and I signpost a lot of the people who come to my course towards Dr. Sarah Wickham, who is wonderful, who takes
yeah.
apart all the research and writes prolifically and has a great website and super books available
Yes.
for women and their families and for the midwives and professionals. And then you've got people like Rachel Reed in Australia,
Yeah.
who's also teaching about physiology. You've got Kirsten, who's coming, you're going to be speaking with soon. There's quite a number of really good people out there that we've got a tribe, and we need to start,
Yeah.
joining up together and networking.
Maybe we need like a big worldwide conference of let's make birth better
Oh, yeah,
and let's
yeah,
invite everybody along and say, how can we fix this? Because
yeah.
it doesn't seem that we're making much headway, I think. I think we are in small increments, and maybe that's all we can expect. We're not going to have huge shifts overnight based on kind of where we've found ourselves these days. And the huge investment in technology and obstetrics where obstetrics don't need to be putting their little noses in with healthy women.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there lies the problem. I mean, it's, as I say, multifaceted. We've got biomedical model that is actually for everyone. It's for everyone. It's for, I don't know what the figures are, but I'm suspecting it's over 95% of the women will be attending a biomedical model, and then the rest will have some home births and a few will have a midwife-led unit. And there might be some smattering of independent midwives around there, but it is tiny compared to where the majority of women are going to have their care, which is in the obstetric model. And that is not appropriate. I'm grateful for it. I'm
Yeah.
happy that it's there. Thank you very much to the obstetricians who've got all those skills, and the machines go bang, and the surgery and the pharmaceuticals. Brilliant, because some will require that. But we've got a narrative, and it's going back to the beginning of our conversation, Tracy. Fear, litigation, got to be seen to be doing things. And that's rife within our maternity services. And risk management. Everybody is a risk. If you're a certain height or a certain weight or a certain age or whatever, oh, that's a risk. Have you got blue eyes? Oh, yes, well, it's just silly, isn't it? It's got to be, I think we've got to have some kind of conversation about that. What is going on? Why is everybody so risky? And that's where Sarah Wickham comes in. She's debunking that. We've got a lot of debunking to do.
Yes. Yeah. I guess it's fun. How do we get the ear of not just midwives, but the parents themselves, so that they understand there is so much great information out there to support them to have a really great birth, or the birth again, or I say as a positive birth as they define it, and whatever that includes. But I just wonder when we can't even get the technology out of the room, that pinging machine,
Yeah,
that
I think
really takes so much focus,
Yeah, I think
I have like. No, I'm just it's like some of my midwifery colleagues will say to me, how they love to see parents coming in, moms coming in with a birth preferences and saying, they prefer intermittent monitoring, because my friends are all saying, oh, great, right, they don't want the CTG, because unfortunately the midwives themselves can't have a conversation there with, well, the evidence really is this is not good for you to be on this monitor. But when they see the women coming in saying, I prefer intermittent monitoring, unless there's a compelling reason not to have it, it's the midwives themselves are like, yes, great, we get to do midwifery today,
Exactly,
and
exactly.
it's
Well, I
little
think
things.
it is, and I think actually that for me that's a big. It's not even a little thing; it's a big thing, because if we are talking about actually women and their families having as women actually, because they're consenting in the birth room, or even in pregnancy too for certain things. If you're going to have consent, informed decision making, you need that information, and they need that information about the pros and cons. And if they are given information about a CTG, for example, that machine, that does not do what it set out to do and has never done, it has never found those babies who are likely to have cerebral palsy because of lack of oxygen. It's never done that. And yet it's increased the cesarean section rate. So women, if they knew this, would they say, oh yeah, I'll have that? Or will they choose something different? So in fact, it is about that, isn't it? It's about giving good information for parents to make their decision on whether they want that or not. After that, once they've got that good information, evidence-based information, if the professional looking after them chooses to speak to them in a different way that actually persuades them to use that because they feel uncomfortable, then that's coercion, and actually it's illegal. It's illegal, it's immoral, and it's unethical. And then we have to be having some serious conversations. And in fact, that is what's happening.
Yeah, and again, back to that nuance of unfortunately, especially if a midwife is quite, medicalized and likes the medical model, when she's in that room with the mom, and the mom says, I prefer intermittent monitoring, and the midwife's like, well, well, how are we going to know if something goes wrong? Or it's because it's the evidence. They're never having a conversation with the evidence. They're making these little, insinuations that you don't really care about your baby if you're opting out of
absolutely
continuous
that is
monitoring.
even
It's
being
like,
said.
what if something happens?
Yeah.
How would we know? And it's so that's how they, it's like, we will have, you will comply. We'll find a way to make you comply. And if you don't comply, so I think women are understanding that if they're in an environment that is not, their statistics don't show them as being very supportive of physiological birth, that they're trying to run this gauntlet of hoping you get a midwife that is not a midwife as such, hoping they'll respect our birth preferences. And what do we do if we get somebody? It's that they're dealing with all of this anxiety before they even walk in the doors to who are they going to meet, because they just don't know on the day if they're going to get a midwife that is going to practice midwifery and be respectful of consent and information, and the other side where it's coercion in a very subtle way. It's that it's really harmful.
Absolutely. It is quite complex, isn't it? I mean, I wonder, I think there's probably a higher percentage of midwives who are like the ones you described, where they go, oh, thank goodness she wants that, because now I can actually do my work better, because she's choosing intermittent auscultation, not to be attached to a monitor, because there is really no need for her to be attached there. But then you have the other ones who feel safer because there's a monitor there and they want to attach them to it. So I think there's probably, I feel maybe, and I hope that there are more midwives in the first instance who are really wanting to be midwives and work with women. It's interesting, isn't it? I think it's all going to come down to evidence. It's going to come down to being honest and saying to the women, I don't know. I don't have that information. I can't answer your question. Don't make it up.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important as well. And sometimes we don't have that information. And the other one is I want to reclaim the word safe. We're going to keep you safe. Are we? Who's keeping who safe here? Because right now with the results, if we look at the outcomes, I don't see safety there. High induction rate, high cesarean section rate, episiotomies, forceps, trauma. We know that these are rising. I don't believe that. That for a minute does not suggest to me that these women are being kept safe. So if somebody says to, and this is for the women again, if they're saying, if they're being offered this, they need to know, is this going to keep me safer? Is it going to keep my baby and myself safer? And I want to know the detail in that. And they need the truth, because actually only 12% of the NICE guidelines are based in high quality evidence. 12%. And about just under 50%, I think, I might be wrong, but I believe it's just under 50% is actually based on expert opinion. Well, I don't know quite whose opinion that is, but that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
are they experts in physiology or experts in obstetrics or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the women, they need it. Their families, their parents, they all need this good quality information when you're having babies. And we're there to provide that. So that's our mission, is to provide that. And I think once women hear that actually what we're suggesting is a little risky, it might have a benefit, but we don't know if it's going to benefit you, but it does carry all these other risks. That's something they need to know about. Don't just whitewash it. Tell them the truth.
I mean, that has to be, that has to be the bar that's set. It's like, let's be honest.
Absolutely. And somebody else in our tribe, is Claire Feely. And she's written about a book, and she's addressing this issue of working outside the guidelines. I believe not only for midwives to help, parents through that minefield of when they're choosing to not adhere to the guidelines, but also for the midwives themselves, because they feel uncomfortable with it. They feel almost like they're betraying their colleagues in the system, because there's a lot of people waiting for that bed, and we need to move on, and we need that to kind of work like a conveyor belt. And if it doesn't, there's that's problematic. So when a woman declines, that's seen as a failure in the midwife's part of not having convinced her to take up that intervention. And Claire Feely writes about this. So again, there's another member of our tribe, and we got some very intelligent, spot-on midwives who are building up the work that we need to do, the foundation for us to step up and be seen and be heard on behalf of the parents.
And all of these wonderful women that we serve.
Absolutely.
And delight in. Molly, thank you so much for being so generous with your time and knowledge and sharing so much with the audience today. Tell us where people can find you, where your classes are, all that good stuff.
Well, I have a website called Optimal Birth. So that's www.optimalbirth.co.uk. And that's my website. Now, I have for ages been saying that I have got courses for the women. I do courses for parents, for the couples. I've got courses for the birth professionals. However, I've been so immersed in my work with professionals, and I'm delighted that that's the case. I'm going all over the place, and I'm in great demand, which is great. But I've just now starting to launch the birth preparation, a newer online version in the coming months. I'll be training birth professionals or birth educators to teach that and teach parents about how to have their babies more easily and pay attention to those elements of the mechanical element of the birth process. But of course, you're not separating that from the whole person. I have to say that quite clearly, that this is a whole person there, not just a pelvis. But
Right.
so I will be doing all that, and it will be coming by the end of March, that we'll be training up birth educators to create some of those meaningful physiology-informed birth preparation classes. And women can get some information on my website as well.
Lovely. And I will include all of your details in our in the show notes.
Thank you.
Thank you again for joining us. I mean, we're not even in Ireland or England. You're in France and I'm in Texas, so
Yeah.
isn't technology amazing? But I will, yeah, I look forward to connecting with you again, Molly, and best of luck with your work. Have a wonderful trip to Kerry. Tell all my colleagues I said hello.
I will. Lovely talking to you. Thank you so much for inviting me, Tracy.
Take care, Molly.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Remember, empowerment begins with knowledge. If you enjoyed our time together and want more content like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. So stay inspired, stay informed, and until next time, take care of yourself.